Welcome back to My Trauma's Chronic, but I'm Iconic. Get ready for this electrifying podcast episode because we have a guest who's shaking up the world of policing and championing diversity like a boss. Let me tell you. Allow me to introduce you to the incredible Jeff Boothe, strategic leader extraordinaire. Jeff is the program director of the London Race Action Plan and the Metropolitan Police Service lead for outreach. He's on a mission to transform the policing experience for Black individuals and increase representation of women and underrepresented individuals in the force. And let me tell you, he's been crushing it. With a jaw-dropping 60% recruitment rate for underrepresented groups and a mind-blowing 40% recruitment rate for women. Jeff is breaking barriers and setting new standards, but that's not all. He's been involved in major projects like the Channel Tunnel Rail Link and iconic events like the London Olympics 2012. Talk about making an impact on a massive scale. Jeff's dedication and passion has earned him a commissioner's commendation for his work on the Queen's Diamond Jubilee event. And he's even a member of prestigious global associations like the National Organization of Black Legal Executives and the International Association of Chief Police. This guy is the definition of a trailblazer. So buckle up because in our upcoming episode, this one, Jeff will be sharing his insights on his promoting diversity, his journey of making a difference, and how we can all contribute to a more inclusive world. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Jeff Boothe. What initially sparked your interest in pursuing a career in law enforcement?
I was looking for a job where I could do different things without having to keep changing organizations, because I know how my mind operates. If I do the same thing for too long, then there's a danger that I can either get disinterested, lack enthusiasm, or get bored. So I wanted to find a role that I could do where I had opportunities of doing different things, and at the same time develop and improve as an individual, but at the same time be able to help others at the same time. So that's why I joined the police service.
So what path did you take to lead you to, joining the police?
Interesting. Initially, one of my first jobs, going back years and years, but my first real job, I used to work for what was called the Department for Health and Social Security, DHSS. We used to do benefit claims. Did that for about 2 years, and then joined British Transport Police. No, it's not British Transport. Joined British Telecom. Yeah, British Telecom. Did stuff there in terms of sales. But each of those roles, I didn't feel satisfied, and I wasn't really enjoying doing the standard Monday to Friday 9 to 5. And a friend of mine at the time just mentioned to me the existence of the British Transport Police. Never heard of them before, and started to look into them. The more I looked into it, the more it intrigued me. Interestingly enough, at the time, I had always said to myself I would never join the Metropolitan Police because my members of my family had challenging encounters with them, put it that way. So joining the British Transport Police for me was an opportunity to do what I wanted to do, and at the same time not going against what I'd kind of privately sworn to myself. So yeah, just applied, and the selection process was pretty rigorous, which again appealed to my sense of competition. And yeah, before I knew it, in the 16th of September 1991, I joined policing.
Wow. Wow. I expected it to be long, but I didn't expect it to like, wow. So that's like, what, 22 years?
30, approaching 33 years.
30, 33 years. Wow. I don't know where I got 23 from. Wow. That's a long time. I feel like, you know, the what you like said about like, you know, wanting like different things, I can kind of relate to it because of my ADHD. I can't do the same thing at this like even if it's interesting, I need to have different tasks, different levels, you know, the competitiveness. I can relate to that too. Um, so what experience or values have shaped your decision to pursue a career that is, you know, because you didn't, so you said you didn't want to join the Metropolitan Police because of, you know, your family members and friends have encountered challenging encounters with the police. And so, and you know, you seem like a person that is very true to their morals and values in life. So, like, what made, because you've ended up working for the Metropolitan, haven't, or is it just in a way?
So I served 24 years within the British Transport Police, and then I transferred to the Metropolitan Police almost 9 years ago. 2nd of, I think it was the 2nd of April 2015. So yeah, I now work for the Met Police, something that I never thought I would do. Interesting experience, challenging at times, but also, if I'm being honest, rewarding in terms of what you can give back to other people, because my whole belief is the majority of people within policing join it as a vocation. If you look at other emergency services like fire service, health service, policing, the majority of people, when you speak to them, they do it because it's a vocation rather than doing it because they're traditionally doing it to get for the money.
Yeah. And I feel like for the people, I've done the introduction before, you know, before we began. But like even though, you know, you're like, I do not want to pursue the Metropolitan Police like route, you still like kept true to your values because you've done like so much work, like the London race action.
London Police Race Action Plan, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, with the hiring rates of 60% for underrepresented groups as well as 40% for female recruitment as well. And you just mentioned the fact that it was, you know, this role is fulfilling and rewarding. What aspects of it is fulfilling and rewarding? You know, you just mentioned one of them being, you know, helping other people.
Yeah, I think when you first start off as a police constable walking the beat, there is a period of time, from my own personal experience, for a period of time, you're in a uniform, you've gone through training school, your head's full of all of the legislation, policies, bylaws. It's like you going back to university, cramming and learning all this stuff, and you're walking around, and then someone will just come up to you and ask you for directions, or they'll ask you for your support, and the trust that that person is putting in you in terms of that initial encounter. Initially, it can take you back, because sometimes they might be asking you something that you genuinely do not know, and it's how your encounter with that person and how you can have a positive impact, because more often than not, you are dealing with people when they're not at their best. Quite often, they're in a position of distress. So to be able to provide that compassion, provide that support, and have a positive impact on somebody is a very, very fulfilling experience. Then as you go up the ranks and you have more influence, and you're able to decide on policy, decide on tactics, decide how you can have a wider impact on people, and call upon your own lived experience and your viewpoint that is different to the majority perspective, because you work within a predominantly white environment, but you're able to provide added value. You can then see how you can have even more of an impact. So that is what has maintained my enthusiasm in doing the role. I wouldn't have stuck with it for these many years if I didn't feel that I was genuinely having an impact. And you feed off the enthusiasm of the people that you are working with and also working for. So that's my own personal perspective.
Perfect. And I have a question. You see so many people in so many different distressing circumstances. Eventually, at least if you've been at it for 32 years, 32, 33 years, and something must you must remember something you worked on that might be traumatizing. How do you deal with that? Because it must be a lot to take, and you need to in that moment you need to be professional. But I imagine you kind of go on autopilot mode where you're like, okay, I got taught on how to do this. I need to do that with a bit of humanness as well. And you don't have in that moment in time, you don't have time to take care of yourself. So what do you do?
That's a very, very, very insightful question. You're absolutely right. The majority of times, because you're performing a role, your mindset, your energies are focused on helping others, and you block out, or you feel that you're blocking out the impact that it's having on yourself. And I feel in this day and age, we're a hell of a lot more aware of trauma, the transference of trauma, the mental health aspects to it. I'd say when I first joined, and probably the majority of my career, that was something that was either not considered or ignored, or we were willfully blind to it. And you'd see the odd occasion where a colleague, somebody that you've worked with for quite some time, would have an issue, but you keep saying to yourself, "Oh, it's not going to be me. I'm fine." You've seen some people try to deal with it through alcohol, and then before you know it, that becomes alcohol abuse to themselves. I'm not a drinker. I've drunk in the past socially, but never gone down that road. But I have, on reflection, haven't dealt with it well. I've internalized it. Felt that I was kind of just pushing it to one side. But you soon come to realize that over time, those things start to creep back in different behaviors, and how you find, how you deal. In the end, for me, there was a realization that I needed help, so I reached out, and was fortunate enough to be supported through therapy. It's not something that I'm ashamed of. In fact, I'm proud that I actually reached out. And quite often now, when I see colleagues displaying some of the behaviours that I recognise, I encourage them to consider. And I think it's one of those things where I started off by being, I think the term is, I was unconsciously incompetent. I didn't realise what I was going through, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I then progressed to a stage where I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how to do it. And then I reached out and started to become consciously competent, but it's an ongoing progression.
It definitely is. And it seems like, you were very proactive once you noticed that, there's a situation to deal with, that you went and, sought some therapy. I think, like, whether you've gone through traumatic experiences or not, therapy is useful for everyone, especially then when you've, dealt with certain experiences, it's therapy becomes really useful. I feel like therapy does a world of difference. I have a question around, does your, like, it might happen more like in the recent years than 20, 30 years ago, but does the police department make active efforts to look after their employees' mental well-being?
Yeah, it's we have a human resources department. We have a occupational health, occupational therapist that has improved over time, and I do feel that I'm not an expert in this field, but I'll just talk from my own personal experience. So I think in terms of the physical side, that support is very, very, very good.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to mental health, then I still feel that there is a lot more that can be done from the perspective of people from ethnic minority groups. My own personal experience is that I'm more likely to feel comfortable speaking to somebody who's got a common shared cultural experience. And I have found in the past that I've had to be pretty adamant and pretty forceful in not accepting what I was given as the first option. And I've even had to, on occasions, explain to a professional to say, well, listen, just imagine, I'm a female, and I'm trying to explain to you what it's like to be a female, and you're a male. No matter how skilled or professional you are not going to be as effective, in my mind, as compared to a female therapist. So here I am, black male, trying to explain some of the issues that I'm having to deal with as a minority, ethnic minority within a predominantly white environment. If you haven't got an understanding of that lived experience, for me, you're not going to be as effective. So I've had to, now over time, I haven't had to raise that argument as often, but I'm hoping now as an organisation we become more and more receptive, because if we're looking to increase the numbers of women and people from underrepresented groups to join the organisation, we need to ensure that the support mechanisms are empathetic and understanding of the need for the right level of diversity within the healthcare provision.
I feel like the one thing, therapy lacks is cultural, like not in all therapies, it depends, but cultural competency is often missing or completely not there. And that makes it difficult. And then that also then be like, okay, this is another barrier for if police officers or anybody who wants to go to therapy might face.
Yeah, and I think my view is that if you are, your focus when you're having therapy should be on yourself and identifying what you can do to help yourself. What you shouldn't also be thinking about is, how do I explain my cultural background and have to keep explaining what it feels like to be from a minority group. Those things you shouldn't have to be spending the time explaining to somebody else. That professional, for me, should have that cultural understanding and awareness, and that is where I feel at the moment there is still more work to be done.
Definitely. So this all comes back to your dedication to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within, policing. What drives this passion?
I think I look back. I'm a great believer in knowing your history. It's a bit of a cliche, but if you don't know where you've come from, how do you avoid, in terms of moving forward, making the same mistakes of the past? So where I am at the moment, I understand that I'm in a privileged position. I understand that there would have been others that have had to endure and have been restricted or blocked or barred from being able to bring about the changes that they wanted to see. So I kind of, for me, I take a personal responsibility to try and move the dial as far forward as I can whilst I'm still in policing. And I'm just a great believer in valuing everybody and saying that we should all have a lived experience where it's fair, it's balanced. And if it isn't, then we should be doing things to address it. And no matter how difficult it might seem, there lies the challenge, is bringing about the change which you know instinctively is the right thing to do. So for me, I'm just doing what I feel is the right thing.
Why do you believe it's important for a police force to be diverse and reflect the community it serves?
So the first thing for me is words matter. The terminology that we use is really, really important. So a couple of times you said force. Now for me, it's in the title. It's the Metropolitan Police Service, not Metropolitan Police Force.
Mm.
If you consider it as a service which is about helping people, and if you go right back to the founding father of Sir Robert Peel, and the term is the police are the people and the people are the police. If you genuinely believe that, then the natural progression for me is we're supposed to provide a policing service to all sections of the community, not some, all. Therefore, if your stated aim is to provide a service to all people, I genuinely believe is that if you are representing all sections of the community by having representatives inside the organization, you are more likely to be effective in providing that service. If you don't represent that community, if you don't have an understanding, then for me, you're not able to fulfill your stated aim. So that's why it is so important to have representation, not just police officers, but police staff. If you look at IT, media, HR, finance, across the board, it needs to be as diverse as possible. And if you can do that, then you're more likely. Now, of course, a police service does need to, on occasions, enforce the law. That's part and parcel of the role, but the overall aim is to provide a service. And I think that quite often many officers lose sight of that, not alone the public.
I do apologise. That's an oversight.
No. You don't have to apologise.
It's just...
The point is, quite often, when I say that to people, they'll say that they feel that they are on the receiving end of an organisation that is enforcing rather than providing a service. And that is something that we, within policing, have to take on board. So it's all well and good me saying we provide a service, but if your lived experience is one where you're not getting a service, where it's more of an enforcement, then we have to adjust. And that's what I'm saying. We're not there yet, but I'm saying that should be our stated goal.
But I like the saying that you said, Sir Peel, is it?
Robert Peel, yes.
Yes. Robert Peel, like the police is the people and the people is the police. I like that. Can you provide examples of how a diverse can you provide examples of how a diverse police team can help build trust and improve community relations?
So I can give, so I currently, one of the things I lead on what's called outreach, which is I have a team, 12 teams that work across the 12 basic command units of London. And their job is to go out and attract more women and more people from underrepresented groups to consider a career in policing. Now, if you consider the tragic circumstances that occurred with Nicole Smallman and Bibba Henry, then if you think about Sarah Everard, then you think about all of the things that have happened, in particular with the Black community. Trust and confidence for women and trust and confidence within the Black community, within policing, has been at an all-time low, in particular within the Met Police. So if you're trying to attract people from those groups, what we have learned is by having people that actually come from those groups, that have that lived experience, that can have those honest conversations, that when people turn around and say, well, why would I want to join an organization that's been found to be organizationally racist, misogynistic, and homophobic? Why would I want to join? Then if you try to explain to them, as the point I made before, that we're a police service and we should be able to represent all people. We're not there, but we should hopefully have a common shared goal that our policing service is working towards higher standards, less crime. Now, how you build trust is by trying to build a relationship with people. And you do that over time. You do that by being authentic. You do that by being empathetic and understanding and listening to the concerns that people will raise. And then over time, you should be able to demonstrate through your professionalism, your integrity, your courage and compassion, that you're trying to make a difference. And if you've got people that look like you, that have got those shared experiences, then I genuinely believe you can make a difference. Within the work that we've done within outreach over the past 2 years, we were set a target of trying to attract 8% of all people that we would attract specifically were to be from the Black community. Now, within the Met at the moment, we've got around about 4% of the organisation is from the Black community. So the target we were set 2 years ago was to try to double that in terms of the people that were looking to apply. Now, my team is made up of between 60 to 65% of my team are from underrepresented groups. 70% of my supervisors are female. And over the past 2 years, they've been able to attract over 25% of the applicants have been from the Black community. So that's 3 times the target that we were set. And that's over 6 times the current ratio within the Met. Now, my argument is we've been able to do that because we've had people from the very groups that we're trying to attract have those meaningful conversations. Be honest, tell them about the challenges, tell them about how difficult it can be, but trying to get them to focus on what we all want is a service that actually represents all of us.
So what so in what ways do you think the diversity within policing can enhance the effectiveness of police strategies and approaches?
I think if you're looking at any walk of life, if you're looking to do something that's going to have a positive impact, you need to have diversity of thought, culture, belief, and viewpoints within the room. There's a danger if you've only got one viewpoint, then you're less likely to be impacted. So if you look at, there's a lot of focus on neighborhood policing, going back to the basics, being able to provide a policing service that will help at a local level. You cannot do that unless you've got the buy-in of all sections of the community. Now, if, as I've said before, the Black community have low trust, then they're not going to routinely want to be involved in discussions about what changes can be made. But if you've got people from diverse backgrounds who have relationships within that community, they can reach out, they can engage, and over time, when you rebuild that trust, those sections that have been seldom heard for so long are more likely to want to come along and sit at the table or actually invite the police into their community to have that dialogue. That's the start of being a more effective policing service.
How can a diverse range of police contribute to a more inclusive and equitable criminal justice system?
Well, I'll give you I'll paint a picture and just kind of illustrate just how challenging the whole criminal justice service can be. So if you think of it from the police service's job is to enforce the law enforcement. Now, once we get to a stage where we're dealing with an individual, you are then looking to put them to the courts. And invariably, that's the Crown Prosecution Service that will look at the evidence that's being provided and decide whether or not it's in the public interest for that to go to court. Then it will go to the court system where there's either a magistrate or a judge that will preside and make a decision. Then it could go to a stage where that person is either going to rehabilitation or they're going into the prison system. So all along that timeline, key decisions are being made. But if we're not very, very careful in checking cultural biases, or people call it unconscious biases, there is a danger that we are reinforcing long-established beliefs that are not absolutely correct. And I'll give you an example where many years ago we had a group of Black males that was stood outside of a restaurant. Now, the restaurant was a West Indian restaurant, and the actual owner was doing a specific deal. I think it was 2 for the price of 1. So word of mouth got round, and a group of people were waiting to go into that restaurant in order to take advantage of the deal. Local residents saw this group of Black people and called the police. The police were called and they approached that group and asked them what were they doing. And quite rightly, the group asked, well, what's the problem? What are we doing? Have we committed any offences? And they were told that there had been reports of disturbances and that people felt unsafe within the area. Now, this group were just waiting to go into the restaurant. One thing led to another, and some of them were arrested because they were believed to be a gang. Associate gang with knife crime and violence. And before you know it, the papers are being put forward to the Crown Prosecution Service. Within the case papers, all you could read was gang, gang, gang. Crown Prosecution Service, in their mind, thinking these are gangs, we're trying to reduce gang violence. So what we're going to need to do is send out a strong message. It then goes to the courts, and the courts are started. Now, it's only because the defense lawyers highlighted a couple of hours earlier, there was a football match in the local area. And there were groups of white males standing outside of a shop, and there were no concerns. And it was seen as a group of males waiting to go to a football match. Whereas stereotypically, a group of black males were seen as gang members. Nobody thought to further investigate. No one thought to speak to the owner of the restaurant to understand what was going on. There was these preconceptions. And when it then went the case papers, it was synonymous with black guys grouped together with gangs. So until we've got people checking our behaviors or checking our beliefs, there's a danger that throughout the criminal justice system, we are typecasting and stereotyping cultural biases that have a negative impact. And that, for me, was a wake-up call, because unless we start to address those, and I'm pleased to say that with the work that I'm doing with the London Police Race Action Plan, we are working with the Crown Prosecution, the courts, to get them to challenge at every point. Why did you believe that a group of black males compared to a group of white males were a threat? Did you not go back to the people that reported and ask them? Was it the fact that they had preconceptions and thought just because they're a group of black guys that they were causing trouble, they were up to no good? And that's where we've really got to be.
And I feel like, not all police officers, but some do not think about the detrimental effects of, just assuming that those guys were outside, they were doing something gang related. Whereas, they would be like, if it got back to their employment or something like that, and they're like, oh, well, this person's allegedly in a gang, and we don't want them working for us anymore. We don't want anything to come back to us. We don't want to be in a dangerous position. And they, terminate the contract or terminate the employment altogether. Now they're out of a job, and the family who thought that, these are innocent men, they're that's my child, or my child would never do that. And then it goes past Crown Prosecution, and they're like, I don't know my children at all. And it's like, because people had that, strong belief that once it goes beyond the Crown Prosecution, that's it. It's pretty much certain that this person's going to go down. And what if, if the defense lawyer didn't bring it up, where would these men be today? And it leads to a lot of questions.
A lot of this stuff has happened in the past. But what we've got to do is work to ask those questions and challenge ingrained behaviours to stop it continuing.
I love the police siren in the background in full effect. Love it. Um, what steps do the police, what steps do you think, in your professional opinion, should the police take to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion within their ranks?
So I think I think one of the things that you need to do is, and it's kind of doing things concurrently. So what I mean by that is, if you look at those that are already in the service, that have been doing the job for a number of years, there is a need to continually retrain for continuous professional development to ensure that people are continuing to progress, and the type of training should include inclusion, diversity, and equity training, bringing in professionals from different backgrounds to challenge thought processes. So a lot of work needs to be done in that area, because my honestly held belief is, if you can ensure that the core of your organization recognize and value these areas, then anybody that you're bringing in is coming into an environment that is one that is receptive and will make that person feel valued, and they could be their true self within the organization. At the moment, we're doing a hell of a lot in terms of new recruits, but my view is we need to be doing a lot more with those officers that are longer in service, and trying to deal with some of the ingrained practices that have just become part and parcel of the way that they do things. So it's about doing things at the same time, because we know it's challenging to attract people, and gone are the days of people like myself where you join and you think to yourself, right, this is going to be a career 25, 30 odd years, whatever. People nowadays are joining and they're making a decision very, very quickly to say, you know what, this is not an environment I want to be in. And they are leaving at a faster rate than we are able to recruit. That tells us there is something very wrong about our culture. And until we address that, and whilst we're doing stuff, it needs to be done wholesale. And that doesn't happen overnight, but if you make a firm commitment and you let people know that you're serious about this, then you will get people that say, you know what, I am prepared to join. I do know that it's not going to be a bed of roses, but I want to be part of that change. I really want to see an organization actually deliver on its goal in that area. And that's one of the things that we need to do.
So what changes do you think that needs to be implemented in the policing environment to attract potential police officers, police staff that would stay as long as you do?
I think it's the challenges with policing are, if you look at what's currently happening with Israel, Palestine, you would say, and there'd be very few people that would disagree, there is an understandable focus on maintaining law and order within this country and dealing with all of the issues. And what can happen is that your focus and your resources get drawn to be dealing with that particular area at potentially the cost of dealing with the cultural issues that I've mentioned. So for me, it all depends on what level of seriousness and importance you place this. If you place this as being one of your number one long-term areas, then you've got to put time, money, and resources in systematically overhauling this area of business. And it's not just little areas, it is across the board. It's the look and feel, it's who's delivering it. And if you don't have the competency and capability within the organization, you need to bring in professionals to help bring about the change, upskill the existing staff so they get to a degree of competency that they can then maintain the work that started if you then decide that you're no longer going to use those professionals. But those professionals that you bring in have got to know their business, and they've got to be from diverse backgrounds, and they've got to have that professional knowledge.
Have you seen any specific instances where a diverse range of police officers has successfully improved community relations or reduced crime rates? You look after 12 teams in London. Have you seen any significant?
Yeah. Well, the 12 outreach teams that I have done absolutely phenomenal work. We work with such a diverse range of community groups, Rastafarian, Somalian, across the board. Now, many of these groups, a couple of years ago, because of their lived experiences, would not have engaged with the police at all, despite repeated efforts. But my team have been able to, through their persistence, through their professionalism and their authenticity, have been able to demonstrate to many of these groups that they want to bring about the change for the right reason. And we've been able to work with young people. We formed a young person's community reference group where we can sit down with them, get their views on key areas of policing, get them to help shape how we do things. And when they see that we're taking on board their comments, that instills in them a degree of confidence that we genuinely want to make a change. And they can then demonstrate to some of their friends that may have said at the beginning, why are you doing this? And it starts to build that snowball effect. Now, that takes time. And every time that there is an adverse incident in the media, which puts the Met in a bad light, that can put a strain on the relationships that you have. But if it's a genuine relationship and they know that you and the team that you're working with are genuine, they can recognize that not all of the Met is like what you see negatively. There are pockets, there are people that genuinely want to make the change for the right reasons. And therefore you can start to build on that. So that's where I feel having officers from diverse backgrounds can genuinely make a change and make a real difference.
And one of another young person who I worked with, they like to keep it brief. They've been into criminal exploitation and that sort of stuff. And whenever they see police officers who are of ethnic minority or the same racism, they're black or black, and they see a black police officer and stuff like that, and they react by saying, "You betrayed me, you joined them." Like, how do you respond to that? Because, there's some like people who are from the marginalized communities will be like, "Oh my God, there's somebody that looks like me. I will like let me try and engage with them, or let me work with them. If they need something, then I would tell them, because they're me." And there's other people that feel completely different.
Yeah, so I say that the term, say black, some people see it in terms of color of skin. I use the term it's about a common shared experience of prejudice and discrimination. So prejudice is where people prejudge based on little or no facts, and discrimination is unfair treatment. Now, if you've experienced that and you've got a common shared experience of it, you can listen to some people's stories, and as they're talking it through, you're kind of thinking, I understand where that person's coming from, because either I've experienced or somebody I know that experienced it. The other thing is that just because I'm from within policing an ethnic minority group doesn't mean I'm going to have exactly the same viewpoint as somebody from the same cultural background. We are diverse in our thinking. We don't all think the same. Mm-hmm. So yes, there are going to be some that will see an officer from a minority background and think, that's good to see, I like that. There are going to be others that will say, oh, that person's a turncoat, you've sold out. But I think that's where it's the challenge for those officers. You imagine it. If you're an officer, you're working within an organization where you may not feel that you can be your true self, and you may not feel that you're valued. And then when you go out onto the streets and you're looking to provide a service for the sections of the community that you know have not previously been provided the service to the level, the very same people that you're looking to help then say negative things for you. It's a challenging scenario, and that goes back to one of the points we mentioned before about how do you deal with that, and how do you deal with the mental health aspects of that side of it. But my genuine belief is that through ongoing conversations, ongoing dialogue, and speaking to those people that see as a negative, demonstrate that you understand their perspective, demonstrate that you're not minimizing their lived experience, but then try to get them to consider, do they want to see a change? Do they want to have a different experience? And if they do, surely one of the ways that we bring that about is by having a more diverse policing service that we're all looking for. And that takes time.
And like in your work, from the people that work in your teams, what have they reported as some of the potential challenges or barriers to achieving diversity and inclusion within policing? And how have you advised them to overcome these challenges, or are working together to think about how you're going to overcome those?
Well, I think you've answered the very good point that you've raised. In my experience, if you're trying to bring about change that you genuinely believe in and genuinely know is the right thing, you're persistent, you're determined, you've got enthusiasm, The only other thing that you need is one other person to share that view. Because if you're sharing the load and you're doing it with others, you can achieve so much. Because the moment you've got somebody else, so with my team, we've got a group of us that have that shared experience, that shared belief, that shared determination, that persistence. That is how we've been able to doggedly bring about the change. It's not easy. There are days when you think to yourself, why the hell are we doing this? There are days when you think, you know what? Let's just give it up. But luckily, there's always one or two within the group that says, no, 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 this is too important. We've come too far. We're not going to give up. And that's the way that you do it, is by working together as a group, because the end result is so rewarding when you see people joining and they're coming up to you and saying, thank you. And when you're able then to continually help them progress, and you see them working their way up the ranks and they're getting recognized, and you're thinking to yourself, it was worth it.
What can individuals and communities do to support and encourage diversity and equity inclusion within policing?
I would say, if there's anybody that's out there that's considering a career, then to reach out to me or my team. Just go on to the Met website, look out for outreach. That's the name of my team. And we'd be happy to have a conversation. We work across all of the 32 London boroughs. We even work outside of London as well. So if there's somebody that wants to join, then we are there to have those conversations. If there's somebody that is so adamant, that is so called like a rejecter, doesn't want to have anything to do with policing, then we would respect their viewpoint. But what we'd like to do is at least have a conversation with them to find out, what can we do to improve their experience? Because our job is still to provide a service to that individual. We hope that they don't have to deal with the police in a negative point, but what we'd want to be is for them to have confidence that at the point where either they or a member of their family, they can have confidence that we're trying to do the right thing. So I would say, just engage in dialogue. If you do see an officer from minority background, just imagine how nice it would be on occasion just to go up to them and say, thank you for what you're doing. Makes a huge difference.
Have you had a moment where somebody has come up to you who you've worked with before, like in the community, who has come and thanked you, and you're like, this is why I do the job I do?
Yeah, that's what's kept me infused and doing what I'm doing now, because the work that I'm doing, we work with in excess of 32 different community groups across London. And by working with them and seeing the change that we can bring about, that's where I get my enthusiasm. That's where I continually get up in the morning infused to be doing stuff. This afternoon, I'm going to be going to an event in Peckham where we're going to be listening to young people explaining what it is that they want to do. That's on my day off. So I enjoy what I do because it's meaningful, and you bring a lot of satisfaction and gain a lot of that satisfaction when you can see that it's having a positive impact.
This is a question which is more of a yes or no and a why question. So, do you think there should be specific quotas or targets set for the recruitment of officers from underrepresented racial groups? Why? Why not?
I think as long as you've got an understanding as to why there is a need for an increase in diversity within the service, and hopefully I've explained why that is so important. And as long as you are bringing in people that have got the right values, capabilities, and are able to demonstrate that they're joining for the right reasons, then I do feel that targets can help focus the mind. The danger can be on occasions that people are more focused on the numbers rather than the quality.
Yes.
So my team are not judged on targets. I know what the targets are, but what I don't do is sit down with them and say, we need to do X, Y, and Z to get this target. What I tell them to do is to be professional, to identify people who've got potential, do things authentically. The figures will take care of themselves. At a more senior level, I will have discussions where we're saying, are we on target in order to achieve the overall aim of having an organization that is more in line with the makeup of London's community. So targets are good if they're used within the right context. Targets can be dangerous if you're purely focused on numbers. Hopefully that answers your question.
That does answer my question. I have a question, like on a senior level, how many people who work on, increasing the number of underrepresented people in policing, as well as, helping marginalized communities, how many people in the managerial level, a percentage would be fine, are of an ethnic minority?
So I'm considered a senior leader within the Metropolitan Police. So we're talking 2023, almost 2024. It's a disappointment for me when I walk into senior leadership meetings and I instinctively look around the room to see how many other people of color are in the room. Mm. And it's fair to say that more often than not, there are less than the number of things I've got on one hand. It's nowhere near where it needs to be. But having said that, we've got two deputy assistant commissioners that are both black. And we have one female who's working on a national program, seconded, who's a temporary DAC, but those numbers are few. We need to have more. And if we are really serious about bringing about the change, then we need to be looking at different ways to increase the numbers within that cohort, within that decision making. And another thing for me is we should be looking at bringing in external partners professionals, community leaders, key influencers to also be in a room if we don't have the right diverse makeup at this moment in time.
What would you say? I'm thinking of like, one of your members of teams approached me, and one of my questions would be, well, even if I did join the policing, who knows how long it would take to get to a rank where I'm be able to make decisions or help contribute to making decisions. Is it beneficial for me or the community to join the world of policing?
I think as I explained earlier, when I joined as a police constable, from the day I joined, I realized that I can have an impact. Obviously, as you ascend the ranks and you get more authority, you can have more influence. There are fast track schemes for people to go through the ranks a lot higher. So there are programs out there. If you have the ability, determination, the right support network, but I wouldn't undervalue the importance that each and every one of us, the impact that each and every one of us can have in the current roles that we perform. I think sometimes there's a misconception that, oh, I haven't got anything to offer, or I'll only wait until I get to a certain rank before I'll speak up. I think a good sign of leadership and a good sign of a learning organization is that it opens itself up and provides opportunities for those that might be junior in rank, but maybe more mature in terms of their viewpoints, is to provide those forums for those views to get heard. So I would say anybody that wants to join, be clear about what it is that you want to achieve. And there are different pathways, and there are people that work within the organization out there to help you.
Can you provide examples of training programs that have been successful in promoting fairness and equal opportunities within the police force?
Yes, so we have
Sorry.
many programs. There's a program called the Aspire program, which focuses, a lot of it is around mindset and perspectives. It gets people to understand just how powerful they are, and how if they look at working in partnership, collaboration with colleagues, and both internally and externally. And it's been really inspiring to see so many people have been on the course, and then as a result of that have gone on to develop in different areas. We have a lead-on program. And in fact, one of the things that we recently, through the work of the Race Action Plan, we identified that there was a gap in what was being provided to Black females around the rank of inspector, chief inspector. So we reached out to an external training provider, an organization run by a Black chief executive that's got a proven track record in people development. And we're in the advanced stages of developing a bespoke program that will help the progression of these Black females. So we're constantly looking at different ways that we can improve things.
And what steps can be taken to ensure that the training programs effectively address unconscious biases and promoting racial equality?
Well, that's part of the role of the London Police Race Action Plan. Is our job is to look at all of the processes across the board, be that attraction, recruitment, retention, the training. It's looking at the lesson plans. It's looking at the actual trainers. It's looking at their style of delivery. It's looking at the environment. It's looking at the canteen. What type of food do they serve? All of these type of things are constantly reviewed, and where we find that there is a gap, and if we don't have the skills within the organization, we bring in external providers. And I'm proud to say within the world of training, a lot of the localized community training is being delivered by organizations that come from the relevant area. So an officer has got a clear understanding of the cultural history of the area that they are working in, rather than try to give a broad brush input. It's specifically tailored, so the individual has got a historical understanding of the area that they're policing, and that in itself can then have an impact on some of the decisions, operational decisions they've made, if they're aware of the background. So there's a lot being done. We also reach out to any providers out there that want to be involved, to encourage them to work with us.
And this is a specific question that we got from one of our listeners. What impact do you believe body-worn cameras and other technologies can have on promoting transparency and accountability and addressing racial disparities within the police?
So technology can have a positive impact if it's used in the right way. Whatever technology we put in place, it will only be as good as the human beings that are utilizing that equipment. And that means that officers have got to be disciplined in terms of, if they are going into an engagement and an encounter, they should be routinely switching on the body worn to demonstrate clearly there's an accurate record of the engagement. What we have seen is that the numbers of complaints made against police have dropped significantly since the introduction of body worn, because there's an accurate record of what, in terms of the engagement. What also needs to be taken into consideration is that if there is an encounter and if somebody's not happy, that at a local level there are police engagement panels where the community can view the body-worn video of an encounter, to be able to sit down and discuss and say, right, this is what happened. Because quite often there have been occasions where things have been captured by somebody else on their mobile phone. It's then put onto a social media site, and people are looking at something and saying that encounter is not right. What they may not be aware of is that that is just a snapshot of a larger picture. And therefore, the whole idea of having these engagement panels, these scrutiny panels at a local level, is that if people are not comfortable with the encounter, they can appeal, they can ask to see it, and within a community group environment, that can be viewed. So it's technology which is helping. It can be improved, but I think we need to educate the community to make them aware of their rights in this area and what they can do if they're not happy with an encounter.
Do you think cultural competency training should be mandatory for all police officers?
Yes, because, as I said before, if you're providing a service, you need to be culturally competent in serving London, which is one of the most diverse cities in the world. So how can you expect to be competent and capable in your job without that ongoing training?
Short but sweet. Do you have you let me see how I'm going to phrase this. How can police ensure, like police departments, ensure that their policies and practices are continuously evaluated and updated to reflect evolving societal understanding of racial equality? Sorry.
Well, as a public sector service, we have an obligation under the Equalities Act, where through our policies and procedures, we should be doing equality impact assessments to ensure that we are not unconsciously excluding or having an adverse impact on certain groups. And that is one of the things through the London Police Race Action Plan. Is my job is to continually ask those questions, but it is a requirement for all of us to ensure that we are constantly monitoring and evaluating that to ensure that we're not doing those things.
Are there specific policies or practices from other countries or jurisdictions that you think could be beneficial in promoting racial equality within the Metropolitan Police?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to recognise that the law, policies and procedures in one country to another, they're not all the same, but there are opportunities to learn and share good practice. One of the things that I personally do is reach out to colleagues in North America, Canada, and also across Europe. I would say that within a lot of the things that we experience in this country are similar to America. So there's a lot that we can learn, but also there is a lot that other countries recognize that we are doing very well over here. So I think quite often we can undervalue what we're already doing. But I think it's about this continual professional development. You need to be looking to see what's being done in different fields. And I think also is recognizing that to look further afield than just policing per se. I work with fire service, health service, education, and they're doing some great work in this area. And it's just seeing where we can borrow with pride and put those things into practice within policing.
What can individuals and communities do to support and hold police departments accountable in their efforts to promote racial equality?
I think there is, if I talk about what's happening within the Met, so there is what's called the New Met for London, which is the Commissioner's strategy that's working to address a number of the issues that were identified within the Baroness Casey report. One of the things that the organisation is doing across each of the 32 London boroughs is having regular regular forums where the community are being invited to come along in order for the community to hear what we as a police service are doing and how we're looking to change, but also an opportunity for their voices to be heard. So I would say to anybody that wants to be involved, there is a neighbourhood superintendent for every one of the 32 London boroughs. Reach out to them, be demanding, make it clear that where it is that you want to see improvement, but also where you feel that you can add value, offer that help, because ultimately it's going to be to the benefit of yourself and your family that you've got a policing service that you can be proud of. That's something that we've all got a responsibility to be involved in.
We're going to move on to our next segment of, we've done a survey and we've sent it to different women who are in Metropolitan Police as well as the British Transport Police about how often face unique obstacles and biases that can impact their experience and opportunities within the field. So we've basically have concluded everything they've said in 5 points. One of them is stereotypes and prejudice. Women of colour may encounter stereotypes and prejudice beliefs that can undermine their credibility and abilities as policing professionals. These biases can create an additional barriers for advancement and recognition within the field. The second one was lack of representation. The underrepresentation of women from marginalised communities in policing leadership positions can limit their visibilities and influence within the profession. The lack of representation can make it challenging for them to advocate for change and address issues specific to their experiences. And then we learn a new phrase called double discrimination, where women of colour may experience intersectional discrimination facing both gender-based biases and racial biases simultaneously. I didn't know it was called double discrimination until very recently. And this kind of compound the challenges they face, create unique obstacles in their career progression. And they find it like a lot of they don't have a lot of room for growth because they have limited mentoring and networking opportunities. The lack of diverse mentors and networks within policing can make it difficult for women of colour to access guidance, support, and opportunities for professional growth. This can impact their abilities to navigate the profession efficiently and advance in their careers. And then there's microaggression, that's our fifth point, and biases in the workplace. Women of colour may encounter microaggressions, subtle forms of discrimination, and biases in their daily interactions in the law enforcement workplace. These experiences can contribute to a hostile or unwelcoming work environment, affecting their overall well-being and job satisfaction. And these are, very briefly summarised. There's much more to it. These issues are very much multifaceted, and these small summaries don't do them justice, but we're just going to keep it short because of the timing. What do you think the police departments can do to actively address and combat the intersectional challenges faced by women of colour within their ranks?
So I think the first thing is acknowledging the existence of the challenges that have been highlighted. I think one of the concerns that came as a result of the Baroness Casey report for those people that I spoke with was many of them had said the information contained in the report was not new to them because they themselves had experienced it and they had expressed those concerns for many years. The disappointing thing for them was that their voices weren't listened to and they weren't acted on. So the fact that you've uncovered and you've raised these points, the challenge now is for us as an organisation is to provide an environment where these women can be empowered to feel that their voices are being heard and that there is going to be meaningful action to address the very points that have been raised. There's an organisation which is called Women of Colour in Policing, and they're doing some outstanding work to address some of these issues. And I feel that just as I've said before about when you talk about Black people, we don't all think the same, we don't all have the same perspectives. To make the mistake to think that all women think the same is a huge error. And I've spoken with women from underrepresented groups, and they have spoken about that double jeopardy. And it's real. It's a real lived experience. And then we touched on it again. You have to ask yourself, what impact is it having on them? What impact is it having on their own mental well-being? So I think there's a hell of a lot of work that needs to be done. It's vitally important. And I think if we were very, very candid, if you look at the landscape, if you look at the makeup of senior leaders in policing and ask yourself the question, how many are from underrepresented groups? And I don't even need to see the figures. I know that it's very, very sparse. And for me, if we're really being honest about this, we wouldn't need the questionnaires and surveys, because you can see right in front of you the lack of representation. What we should be saying is, why is that the case, and what is it that we now need to be doing to address it? So I think it's good that you've got a survey, but we've got to demonstrate now that we've acknowledged and accept what's been in front of us for quite some time, and then come up with a plan that involves women from underrepresented groups so that they feel that they are at the helm in bringing about the change that they want to see.
Are there any policies or initiatives that you believe can be implemented to promote equal opportunities and advancements in career for women of colour in the police force?
There are policies that are there, as I spoke to you before, when we're looking at development programs in getting women at the rank of chief inspector, and chief inspector to superintendent. So you can put all the policies in place, but it goes back to the point I'm making. If there is not a real drive, determination, and commitment from the people that are in those positions of power to bring about the change, then you're not going to move stuff as fast forward as you really want to. So policies and procedures are great, but you've got to have a real commitment from leaders to say, I'm not comfortable with the current status quo. I need to do X, Y, and Z and demonstrate how far am I prepared to go to bring about that change?
And do you think people who are recruiting have that commitment? And we talked about the policies, earlier when we were talking about racial disparities and inequalities. But even though they're in place, are they in place? Like, are they being properly implemented, do you think?
Well, this is where the race action plan, it's our job to hold those teams to account, to systematically look at the data, look at the attrition rates, ask the questions, what is it that we're doing? Why is it that we're not getting the numbers through? Why is it that we don't have the representation? So that's part and parcel of my job, but it goes back to the point I just made. If you've got leaders that are making it absolutely clear there is no wriggle room, that we are fully committed to this, and we will be holding everyone that's involved in this accountable, that's going to cause people to start to do this stuff differently. If you feel that it's just lip service, then you will just continue to do what you've always done, and you'll see the odd one or two getting through. But there really does need to be that real commitment, real determination, dogged determination, and holding people to account to bring about the change that we need to see in a more timely fashion.
And how can what roles can male colleagues and supervisors play in creating an inclusive and supportive environment for women from underrepresented communities in policing?
Well, I think the importance of mentoring, coaching, sponsorship, which is creating opportunities, empowering and challenging some women who may say, I'm not ready yet. Challenge them and say to them, no, you are ready. And I think also is, if you know that somebody's got the ability, I think what you then have to do is ask that person, what's their goals? What is it that they want to achieve? And challenge them, but also be supportive. So I think if you create an environment where, as a woman, you feel valued, as a woman, you feel that your line manager wants to see you succeed, is prepared to provide you that support, then you're more likely to start to get that change in mindset which is required. There are many out there that are just crying out for that support and are not receiving it at the moment. So what we need to be doing as men is to provide that support.
How can the experiences and challenges faced by women in policing be incorporated into broader conversations about racial and gender equity?
Well, I think your question itself illustrates the change in mindset that we need to adopt. We need to recognize issues that are facing women are not standalone. They are mainstream. They've got to be part of day-to-day discussions. I think population-wise, I think over 51% are females, so they are the majority. You are the majority. So we've got to change our mindset and recognize that this is part and parcel of the day-to-day conversation that we have, rather than it's a once in a while standalone conversation, and then we'll go back to what we always want to deal with.
And the media is, they're always like pretty much majority of the time there to highlight, oh my God, this is when policing has, basically done wrong, broke the law, when policing has not been the best. But how can the media play a role in highlighting the experiences and achievements of women from underrepresented communities in policing and counter the negative stereotypes?
Well, what I'm saying here might not resonate with some. I think if there are women in the world of media that are in positions of power, they can influence the narrative. They themselves can start to be looking for more positive and enlightening stories to change the viewpoints, because there are many examples of positive role models, women from underrepresented groups that are doing fantastic work. It's not difficult to find if you really want to find it. And I think as I see how media is evolving and the way that social media is having more and more of an impact, I think a lot of the traditional media sources will be left behind, because I think a lot of the work that's been done by women of colour in policing will get out into the community through different social media forums, and they will start to have a positive impact. So I genuinely feel that women themselves within media can be telling the stories that they want to hear.
Absolutely. I got to say that was very well said. Do you want to talk about violence against women and girls and the intersectionality in that, or would you want to move to another? Is that something that you would like to talk about?
Well, the thing is, violence against women and girls is an area that should be front and centre, should be spoken about. The only thing I would add to that is that if you look at the data, you'll see that women from underrepresented groups and certain cultural backgrounds are more susceptible to this type of crime. And that is why it is so important that we do look at it through the lens of race and culture, to ensure that we are providing the right service that is specific to those victims. Because not all women are the same. Not all women have the same cultural background. So we have to ensure that we recognize violence against women and girls is an important area, but we've also got to ensure that we're catering for and we are receptive to the cultural nuances that certain women have a right to be provided.
Definitely. Do you think that do you see your London race action plan playing a part in addressing violence against women and girls?
Yeah, absolutely. So very quickly, the race action plan is broken down into 4 key areas. I'll start off with the 4th one, because you've asked about violence against women and girls. The 4th strand looks at Black people who are victims of crime. So there is a clear focus on providing support to victims of crime, and therefore violence against women and girls. The race action plan should be looking at it. How does this have a specific impact upon the Black community and women within the Black community? It's then, and it should be linked to the wider violence against women overall strategy. So it's about aligning activity. The race action plan also looks at strand 3 is looking at community engagement. So if you've got stronger community involvement, hopefully there's improved dialogue, improved awareness, and hopefully people are more likely to come forward to report instances or areas of concern. Strand 2 looks at use of policing powers and disproportionality. So it's looking at areas of, say, stop and search, use of force, custody strip searching, even as varied as disproportionality in terms of licensing within the music industry. So there's a range of things there. And then strand 1 looks at recruitment, retention, and progression, and also ensuring that we are aware of the voices of Black officers and staff. So the race action plan covers a huge array of areas, but in the area in terms of violence against women and girls, as I've said, there's a real opportunity under work strand 4 to support the work that's already going, to ensure that we are aware of that added cultural aspect to an area that is vitally important to be tackled.
How does a plan address the root cause of violence against women and girls, particularly within racial and ethnic communities?
So what the way that the plan operates is to say, within the Met, talk from that perspective, violence against women and girls, there will be a chief officer lead, and there should be an overarching strategy to deal with that. And what you'll look at doing is, first thing is, with any area that you look at, is how do you prevent it? That's going to be one of the key things. So you look at what are the preventative measures, and then you start to think to yourself, there is normally within a crime, there's a victim. So you analyze, are there any trends? What are the type of people that are victims? Then you look at the offender, and you say to yourself, right, who are the people that are committing? And what we've found is that usually 20% of the offenders commit 80% of the actual crimes. So you do your research and analysis, look at the data to identify those high harm offenders, and you then start to say, what can you do? What measures can you take to prevent that person from committing those offences? You then look at, where do these things take place? Do they take place predominantly in the home? Are there certain locations where these things take place? So you get as much of the data as you can as possible. And then you set up a strategy to say, right, what can we do? So if somebody then reports it, what measures are there to ensure that that person doesn't have to go back into an environment where they're going to be a repeat victim? You then look at the wider family, what's the impact that it's having on everybody else? So those are the things that should be done as part of the violence against women and girls strategy. And I just touched on it very briefly. Where the race action plan comes in is to ask the question, all of the things that are currently being done and what I've just said, we ask the additional question, which is, are you analysing and assessing and monitoring the impact specifically on the Black community? And if you're not, we're asking you to do that because we know anecdotally there's a higher percentage of victims from that community. So that's the added impact. Our job is not to replace, our job is to support the overall violence against women and girls strategy.
Are there any provision in place to address the issue of underreporting of violence against women and girls within minority communities?
Yeah, and that's part and parcel of what the Race Action Plan is to be able to recognise there's a lack of trust in policing in the first place. There's also a concern within the Black community that if they do report, there is a concern as to how the police will deal with the offenders. So quite often, it might sound very perverse, but quite often, many of these women and young girls that are victims are sometimes more worried about the treatment that will go out to their partner from the police, which may cause them not to report. We also know that there are cultural challenges where sometimes there are pressures being placed on women not to report. So we have to have a better understanding of the cultural dynamics, and that's why it is so important to have a policing service that is diverse and understands the environment within which many of these women and young girls operate in, to ensure that we provide them with the right support and for them to realise that it's not okay for them to be on the receiving end of violence. It's not okay for them to suffer in silence, and it's not okay for others to put pressure on them not to report. We need to improve that confidence, and hopefully as the figures start to demonstrate, we're doing some work in that area, but there's a lot more to do.
Are there, how does a London Race Action Plan ensure accountability and monitoring of progress in addressing violence against women and girls?
So what should be happening is, you may be aware, so there's the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime, which is MOPAC, that have got an ultimate responsibility for holding the Metropolitan Police to account. There is a recently formed London Policing Board that just this week was holding our Commissioner and Assistant Commissioner asking specifically about violence against women and girls. And there are a number of forums, People and Culture, which is focusing on this area. I would also say that there's opportunities for anybody that wants to get involved in this area, again, just to reach out to us, and we'll look to be able to identify how we can signpost anybody that wants to get involved. But it is, you're absolutely right, this is an area where we have to demonstrate and show that we are accountable in terms of turning this important area around.